Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I know, the video quality, it looks like I recorded this with a potato. I'm sorry, okay? It's kind of impromptu, this video, and it's because I have a confession to make, and that is that I used to have a YouTube channel. I started one about New Age spirituality and specifically A Course in Miracles. That's what I was really heavily into before I encountered Christ, before I became a Christian. I was so devoted to it that sorry, I'm like embarrassed saying it now, but I was so devoted to it and I was pretty passionate about it. So I decided to make videos. That channel did not do well at all. And in hindsight, I know that it was the Lord shutting it down because it was basically misinformation. Knowing what I know now, please do not judge me too hard. I was doing what I thought was right at the time. And, now I know better. And I'm very grateful that God even let me put myself out there at all. Once I became a Christian, I took this huge break before starting this current channel because I just I didn't want to be a bad ambassador, if that makes sense, for Christ. You know what I mean? Like if I was going to put myself out and say things to the public, I wanted to make sure that I had like at least some foundational knowledge after like reading the Bible and getting to know Jesus a little bit more and like developing that new relationship with the Lord. So I am back, and you may notice that in my first few videos on this channel I'm a little bit shy, and that's because I like did not trust myself to be back on camera and like be able to have this platform. But anyways, I wanted to share this video that I came across that I like locked away in my vault because obviously I did not want to talk about new age stuff anymore. But it's very interesting because it kind of delves into, first of all, my spiritual encounter with Christ, which I did mention in my first testimony video, but this one is more about my reasoning and like my critical thinking as to how I decided to renounce everything and why I did end up giving my life to Christ. So I just wanted to share this with you if you are interested in kind of like an addendum or a more like deep dive into what made me leave behind Islam and New Age and become a Christian. This is like deleted footage, bonus scenes with director's commentary. Anyways, here you are. Enjoy. So, I'm gonna say about 6 months ago, I felt something or someone tell me to get baptized. Okay, and let me tell you something. I have been resistant to Christianity for most of my life. One, because I grew up Muslim, and if you have yourself grown up in a Muslim community, you know that there's quite a bit of rhetoric on why Christianity is not the correct religion, because to Muslims, Jesus is not divine. He is not a triune aspect of God. He is just a prophet to be respected and revered, but not as a divine entity. And so I grew up with that quite heavily ingrained. And then I also had a very good Christian friend. She was the local pastor's daughter. And so she was very heavily involved in the church growing up. And then she also kind of had a breakup with the church, and whatever indoctrination she had, it didn't resonate with her any longer as we were both growing up. And so she was extricating herself from Christianity. And then beyond that, I just never really had anyone who I was close to that was Christian. And so I never had anyone to bounce ideas off of. My closest friend, my best friend, is a Christian, but he started out as an atheist. And it's only in the past 2 years that he's gone to Christianity and joined a church and started learning about that. For me to even have this thought implanted in my mind to get baptized, I was like, what the heck? I've always been very fascinated and passionate about God. I do believe in a monotheistic God. I do believe that there has to be a point of origin for all of our universe. And if I try to employ my scientific reasoning, all creation comes from a creator, right? Like, AI is the product of very brilliant humans. Something simpler. A painting comes from a painter. A building is built by construction workers and architects and engineers and such. And so to me, I just feel like if there was a Big Bang, there must have been an origin. There just needs to be some sort of force behind creation. That's the only way it makes sense to me. And so I've always believed in God, not necessarily the God of a particular religion. Every month for about 6 months, I kept feeling you need to get baptized, but I didn't want to do it because I had this resistance to Christianity. I didn't really want to get baptized, to be quite honest with you guys, and so I just kept brushing it off. I have been preaching A Course in Miracles very passionately, and I feel like I've dedicated a very significant chunk of my life to learning about the Course and applying it to my life, but I was finding that I was no longer happy with the framework that A Course in Miracles provides. I was finding it really difficult to reconcile the whole concept that everything around us, especially what is pain and suffering, is an illusion. I was seeing my own suffering and I was witnessing the suffering of my fellow human beings. And to me, I was like, how can this be an illusion? I don't understand. Like, no matter what I do, no matter how much I train myself to put my ego aside and to, based on the Course's workbook exercises, that everything around me has no meaning, is not actually real. I couldn't do it. I tried so hard, you guys. I'm telling you, I put so much faith in the Course, and I was like, I just need to remove the blocks of my ego, right? To gain spiritual vision, as is described in the Course. And I can't. Like, when I see my fellow man hurting, I don't know how I'm supposed to write that off as an illusion. I can't. This illusion, if it is one, it's very strong. It's a very strong illusion to detach yourself from. It feels very real, and I really don't want to write off anyone's pain or discredit what they're going through. I have been experiencing depression and anxiety, and I've been going to my counselor and my therapist and my family doctor to work through all of that. And I couldn't really understand why my spirituality wasn't helping me the way I thought it would, 10 years into it. I felt that no matter how devoted I was to the Course, no matter how obedient I was, I guess I'm just a results-driven person, where I was like, 10 years in, I feel like I should be feeling better about my inner world, and I really wasn't. On top of that, another very fundamental tenet of the Course is the concept of unconditional forgiveness, which in theory is absolutely amazing. I think that any good that comes out of any religion is a central focus is on forgiving and letting go of the past, and just understanding that at the end of the day, hurt people. Abusers are usually the product of abuse themselves, and so to break the cycle of trauma and abuse, it is very helpful to forgive. That being said, I also really was starting to have trouble with the concept of unconditional forgiveness, not just on a personal level, but just the concept of justice. This particular point I find really hard to articulate because there's just something about unconditional forgiveness, which sure is very nice, once again, on paper. It's really hard, right, to forgive when someone has done you wrong. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't forgive. You absolutely should. But I think when it comes to a higher power that I want to believe in, I really want my God to care about the injustices that have been done to me personally. I don't know, does that make me selfish? But I was just really struggling to even forgive this person because God forgives them. In fact, God doesn't believe they did anything wrong in the first place. And to me, that's okay, so then my hurt means nothing. On that note, I just feel another problem for me that has come to light recently about the Course is that this whole everyone is perfect, everything is perfect in reality, you're perfect, I'm perfect. I don't feel perfect. I think there's beauty in imperfection. I think that there's something very profound about us not being perfect and to kind of really embrace and celebrate those flaws instead of kind of sweeping them under the rug and being well, it's all an illusion, it's just not real, right? So in summary, that was my problem with the Course, which I know I'm saying it with a lot of gusto right now, but it was very difficult for me. I feel like this depression that I've been going through since the new year, it's a very existential depression in that, like, I really loved A Course in Miracles for so long, and I know I'm using it in past tense. That is coming soon as to why, but you know when something is just no longer the right fit for you, and like you know in your heart that it's no longer resonating with you, and then there's just something wrong and you can't pinpoint it, but the sunken cost fallacy is that you've put so much love and passion and investment of your life into it, and so you don't really want to let go. So that leads me to about just under 2 months ago, I finally gave in to my inner voice telling me to get baptized. And like I said, I have no idea whether that's the God of A Course in Miracles or some other God, you know, putting this idea into my mind. I don't know why I felt that I needed to get baptized against my own will. Like, it wasn't even like, oh, I'm really interested and curious about Christianity, I want to get back. No, I was like, I'm not really interested in Christianity. Like, why is this thought coming to my mind? It orchestrated itself perfectly. A big part of me not wanting to get baptized was that I didn't want this giant crowd, and like usually baptisms occur in a church, like that's how it is locally here anyways. That's how my good Christian friend got baptized himself, was in front of the congregation and there were cameras on him, and I'm not that person. So I was like, oh my gosh, like, God, if you want me to get baptized, like, it needs to be done privately. It needs to be like me, you, and the Holy Spirit, and like that's it, you know what I mean? And so it happened. I don't know how the heck it just fell into my lap, but I was able to get baptized in the river here in my city, and it was truly a beautiful experience. It was lovely, but I'll tell you guys, like, even then, I wasn't ready to let go of A Course in Miracles. It's not like I was like, okay, you know, like, that's it, everything else out the door, and I'm a Christian now. Like, it wasn't like that. I did it because I felt like I was being commanded to, but I didn't have conviction, even as I was doing it, even though it felt nice. I was like, okay, well, I don't know, maybe this is somehow going to tie into my belief in the Course. I was continuing to invest in the Course, you know, I was continuing to do the exercises. I was like, you know what, maybe if I just try one more time to get through the workbook, then I don't know, something will click and things will make more sense to me. It wasn't happening. I was feeling really low. I was feeling really down about everything. Very synchronistically, I made my last video on conspiracy theories, and I stumbled upon one about the Course. And that is that the scribe Helen Schucman, so she's the one who, over the course of 7 years, channeled what she believed, or what the Course community believes to be the voice of Jesus, and helping her was her associate, William Thetford. I don't know why I said associate, really weird. Associate. AKA Bill Thetford. There is a rumor that he was affiliated with the CIA. And during this time that Helen was channeling, this was during the 70s when MK Ultra, which is a real thing, which there is hard evidence for, was a thing. It was a program that was being rolled out, I guess, by the CIA, and they were seeing what was possible in the realm of psychological conditioning. And so, you know, that just raises some alarm bells for me. It is in the realm of possibility now. On top of that, that kind of got me thinking as to, okay, well, let's look at the legitimacy of Helen Schucman's channeling versus like any other scripture or any other holy divination, like, channeled works, right? And so that kind of brought me back to the monotheistic religions. Like, okay, well, what about the Quran? Like, that was supposed to be the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He channeled that himself. So, like, they can't both be right. They both preach fundamentally different things. So, like, what's correct? And then I just started thinking about, well, what is truth, right? Like, how can we determine that something is true? I mean, if we look at Helen Schucman and what she channeled, and if we look at what the Prophet Muhammad channeled, a lot of people would say that both of these individuals themselves could not have come up with the verbiage that they did into, like, you know, create these holy texts. For both individuals, they did not have the same linguistic capabilities as what came through. And so I don't deny that both of these important people had a supernatural experience that was very spiritual in nature. Overall, like, I believe that just because you're channeling energy, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily of the light and that it has the best of intentions, right? Unfortunately, that opened a whole can of worms for me where I was like, how can I trust that the voice that came through Helen was in fact the voice of Jesus Christ? And that, I think, is the whole reason I even trusted A Course in Miracles in the first place. The only reason I gave it any credence is because the voice was supposed to be Jesus. Hello, this is Editing Sama. I completely forgot to mention a very important point, another red flag about the course that really made me reconsider. And once again, I am not the purveyor of objective truth, so I can't tell you one way or another if this is for sure true, but I am going to just quote something that I read when deep diving into the origins of A Course in Miracles and how the scribe Helen Schucman felt about it. So it mentions here that up until Helen Schucman's death, she had kind of fallen into this depression, and a close friend of hers, a Franciscan Catholic priest, Benedict Groeschel, wrote, Helen told him many times, I hate that damn book, referring to the Course, and that up until her passing, she repeatedly disavowed its teachings. And then quoting directly from Benedict Groeschel, quote, this woman, who had written so eloquently in A Course in Miracles that suffering really did not exist, spent the last 2 years of her life in the blackest psychotic depression I have ever witnessed. So I was kind of looking at counter arguments to this experience of, you know, feeling dissatisfied and very unhappy about the course. Like, that's how Helen Schucman felt. And on Reddit, I found, you know, counter arguments saying, well, depression is a natural part of going through the course because you're dismantling your present thought system. Basically, everything you know, you're finding out that it's not true, it's a lie. And so the death of the ego self can be very painful. I understand, like, I've gone through a dark night of the soul, but I don't think that there should be lingering depression. I feel like there should be meaning and purpose to the lives and the reality that we're presented with right now on a regular basis. I don't know why a loving God would let us remain in an illusory world if we're not meant to be here. This is something I've been battling in my mind for a long time, but so I'm not entirely sure if what Helen was channeling was truly the words of Jesus or if it was some other entity masquerading as Jesus. Like, when we think of channeling, really anything can come through, right? And we just have to take the word of the channeler. Like, I could, if I was psychic enough to channel, I could channel something very poetic and meaningful that, yes, did not actually come from me, but how could even I, as a channeler, guarantee that what was coming through was truth? I could really say anything. I could even glorify myself as a scribe of a higher power, but like, how does one know? I also want to draw a parallel to Islam here because there is a similarity in that the Quran was dictated to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and that happened initially when he went to the cave of Hira. And I will be quoting Sahih Bukhari, the first volume, where Muhammad describes his experience encountering Archangel Gabriel, who told him, like, take down this dictation, this is the Quran. And so according to Sahih Bukhari, which is considered to be the most trustworthy hadith, Muhammad said that the angel caught me forcefully and pressed me so hard that I could not bear it anymore. And apparently this happened repeatedly because Muhammad was resisting. And then after that initial encounter, he said that his heart was beating severely. And then in another volume of the Hadith in Sahih Bukhari, this is volume 9, Hadith 111, Muhammad again says that his neck muscles twitched in terror when he saw Gabriel, the angel, and that after a certain period of time, after encountering Gabriel, he was so depressed, like the prophet fell into such a depression, that he intended several times to throw himself from the tops of high mountains, and every time he went up the top of a mountain in order to throw himself down, Gabriel would appear before him and say, "O Muhammad, You are indeed Allah's apostle in truth. So once again, this kind of brings me back to the point, like, if you're channeling or, encountering a supernatural entity, really it can say or do anything. How can you trust its intentions? I do believe in the dark side of the supernatural. I do believe that there are entities that can pretend to be something else in order to fulfill their own agenda. And I know this is like the really loopy side of conspiracy theories and stuff, but those are my beliefs. So based on all these anecdotes, I feel like Helen Schucman could have also been in a very similar situation that Prophet Muhammad was in. And I feel like a loving God would not make someone feel uncomfortable. Like, if I compare this to the Jesus of the Bible, Jesus was very happily teaching and preaching. And yes, he also had his human moments where he prayed to God at the Garden of Gethsemane to be like, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, by the way. I am a Bible noob, but I know Jesus prayed to God or the Heavenly Father and was like, oh, like, don't make me do this. And he was scared of death and of being crucified brutally. But then he said, if it's your will, let it be done. And I just feel that the Jesus of the Bible was much more self-assured and didn't really have doubts about his teachings. Like, he was very convicted, and that stayed with him throughout his entire life. This brings me to my story about meeting Jesus Christ many years ago. When I was exploring New Age spirituality, I went for a quantum hypnotherapy session, which is essentially a guided meditation or a hypnosis session, just kind of like an experience where you close your eyes and you let your mind drift and like see what shows up in your mind's eye. And I don't consider myself clairvoyant at all, and so I definitely felt that session was out of the ordinary for me. I did close my eyes. I did, listen to the soothing voice of my practitioner, and I was able to visualize past lifetimes. Now, whether that was my imagination or not, I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to keep my rational mind out of it for the purposes of storytelling. One very significant memory I have of that quantum hypnotherapy session is that at the end, there was one final guided meditation that wasn't meant to be like a past life exploration. It was more just like, what does the universe or God or whatever, what do the powers that be want you to know at this time? And so, unlike the rest of the session, for this particular portion of the guided meditation that I was being walked through, I was seeing things before the practitioner was telling me that I would see them. So for example, I would see in my mind's eye, I would see myself walking up a hill, and then the lady who was with me would say in her very soothing voice, I want you to now imagine that you're walking up a hill. Well, okay, I'm already doing that. And then I got to the top of the hill and I saw a tree, and once again, the practitioner I was working with was like, I want you to imagine that you reach the top of the hill and you're seeing a tree. Okay, and this continued to happen for several minutes, and then eventually I saw someone who looked exactly like Jesus. There I was, once again, no affiliation with Christianity at this point. Was it the Eurocentric version of Jesus, or did he actually look like the Jewish figure that he should have looked like from the Middle East at that time? I don't know. Okay, all I know is that I recognized this person was wearing very beautifully embroidered robes, olive green with gold brocade embroidery around the sleeves and the collar, and I remember this, I remember what it looked like, and to me it was Jesus, okay? My soul recognized this person at the top of the hill as Jesus, and he said, sit down next to me. There was a stone bench there, so I sat down next to him, and he handed me a wooden box. Kind of like, it looked like a jewelry box, and I opened it up, and inside was this very big, I'm gonna say this massive diamond, except instead of your traditional diamond that shines brilliantly, it was emitting light, and it was more of a sunshiny yellow. So I took it out of the box, and then Jesus basically helped me press that crystal. I'm going to lift myself here a little bit. He told me to press it. Oh, look, this is my hair, and then there's cat hair. Hello. Anyways, he pressed it into my abdomen area. So I guess what you would consider the solar plexus chakra. And he said this is my gift to you. And it's not like he was this is for your solar plexus chakra, and this is I want you to imagine this light as being joy or whatever. But that's just essentially what it felt like. And so he pressed it into my abdomen. He got up and then he started walking away. And as he's walking away, he turned around. He looked at me over his shoulder, gave me a wink, and said, "I'm actually cooler than people think." And then, very cheeky, he walked away, and it was lovely. It was a great experience, and it stuck with me. And like ever since, I've had like basically a fangirl crush on Jesus Christ. I think he's awesome. So, but once again, I never was like, this means that I will now convert to Christianity. And that happened to me like nearly 10 years ago, that experience, meeting Jesus. And so I just went on my merry way, whatever. So full circle back to recently, upon hearing of my my beliefs being questioned as to whether Helen Schuckman actually did channel Jesus, I was like, well, I guess I should probably compare this to the Jesus Christ of the Bible, because the Bible is really the only record we have of like Jesus's life. I also read about the historical facts around Jesus. I basically went on this like research bender where I looked at historical accounts of Jesus, and this is from people who are not Christians. So, like Jewish scholars. I know there is historical evidence from non-Christians that confirms Jesus's existence. And then from there, obviously, we rely on the Bible as a series of eyewitness accounts. Now, could the Bible be doctored to say false things about this historical figure, Jesus? Sure, maybe. However, he was like incredibly influential, okay? Like he was clearly, Jesus did something great. It's not like he just walked around and then all of a sudden was the most influential man in the history of mankind. Like there must be some substance. He must have done something, right? That caught people's attention. Maybe he was just a great orator. That doesn't mean that he was divine. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you to figure out. But for me, I went down this rabbit hole of trying to figure out if I felt that A Course in Miracles was legit for me, because I basically placed all my trust in the fact that I thought it was Jesus coming through. Do I believe that now? After all the research that I've done, I no longer have the same confidence in A Course in Miracles that I did prior. There just came a day when I was like, I have done all this reading just out of general curiosity, to be honest, and because I was called to baptism and I'm not sure why, so obviously I think it's worth looking into. And I just took the evidence presented to me from the Bible, which is not just one person channeling, it is multiple gospels. Once again, are the people writing those gospels reliable? I don't know. But to me, in my logical head, it makes more sense that if multiple people are writing about the same person, whereas one person over here is channeling the voice of Jesus, the multiple people who are writing eyewitness accounts where there's overlap and there's continuity, that, to me, that consistency is more credible than one person channeling. This culminated in me one day in bed, ready for bed, like not doing any reading, not doing any research on anything, me just kind of very heartfelt, earnestly putting my hands together and saying, you know what? If the God of Christianity, if Jesus is the way, I finally accept. And this prayer is kind of an experiment, and I will admit that openly. But I'm willing to renounce everything else. Like, I'm really willing to let go of the Course. I'm willing to let go of the multiple hundreds of psychic readings that I was getting. I was getting so many psychic readings, you guys, and I was like too ashamed to admit it. Everything from my cats and how they were feeling to my career and what I should do with my life. And I was never getting answers. I was never satisfied, and I was wasting so much money. It's so embarrassing. So as part of my prayer, I was like, I give it all up. I was trying to learn to be psychic myself. I was reading several books on cartomancy, which is like tarot cards and like even playing cards and stuff. Like I was going balls to the walls, you guys, trying to figure out my life from a spiritual perspective. And I was like, I give it all up. In that one prayer, I was like, if this is what you want, I'm willing to do that. I really am. Because I was miserable, right? I was so unhappy. After I said that prayer, which was truly the most honest, heartfelt prayer that I'd done in a while, something happened. All I can say is that I don't consider myself to be very psychic, but I felt a tingling sensation all through my body, which then localized to like my shoulder area. And then I don't even know how to say this without sounding like a crazy person, but it felt like a hand had come and was pulling off this blanket of energy, and I could feel like the edge of the blanket was like this tingling sensation, and it was like moving off my head as something was being lifted off of me. That's all I can describe it to you as. I don't know how to rationalize this in my brain. It is what I truly felt, and I don't know, right? It happened, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to bed now. That's enough for one night, you know? I went to sleep. You guys, the next day, no more brain fog. I was experiencing horrendous brain fog and a lack of clarity. All of a sudden, I felt like someone had removed a blindfold off of me, and like so many questions that I had about my existence and my purpose in this life and my place in this world, I all of a sudden just had this knowing that I was loved for, I was cared for, and that it would be okay, and that I had a purpose here on earth. Depression gone. Anxiety gone. My, not addiction, I don't want to call it an addiction, but my temptation, I guess, or the appeal of sexual imagery, that's the professional way I'll put it, gone. My addiction to psychic readings, gone. I haven't gotten a psychic reading in a couple of months, which is extraordinary for me, really. I haven't gotten a psychic reading since that night. I seem to be way better on social media and putting my phone down. My social media, like doom scrolling addiction, gone. I just have so much more peace now, you guys. I don't know how else to say it. It was overnight. The next day I woke up and I was like, wow, I feel like 1,000,000,000 times better. So I'm here to announce that based on results in my life and based on the miraculous transformation that I have experienced, I am now a Christian. And I'm kind of like a reluctant Christian because no one converted me. No one told me I was going to hell if I didn't do it. I felt loved into it. I felt like God was like, I love you and I want to reveal myself to you. So I went to my therapist last week and she was like, okay, so a month ago when you came in, you said your mood was at 3.5 out of 10. How are you feeling now? And thankfully, she was very open to me describing my spiritual experience that I had. And she very objectively, like I don't even know if she's religious or not. I don't know what she believes. She kept that out of the conversation. She was very objectively like, I'm really happy for you. How are you feeling? And I'm at a 9 out of 10, you guys. I am significantly happier. I am feeling much better. I'm so grateful, and I feel like this may rub people the wrong way to be like, oh, like she's been indoctrinated. But I don't care because I'm happy again. And you know how Christians are like, oh, I'm a born again Christian. I feel like I'm born again. Like I no longer have this despair about what I'm doing with my life and the lack of success I've achieved based on, you know, my previous standards of what I thought success should look like. And I feel like the world is my oyster. I have never been so excited about my life in my whole, forever. I am very, very excited about the future. I feel like I have so many options available to me now. I'm just really happy and excited. So that is my story as to what I've been up to recently. And I'm like really happy. I hope you follow along on my journey. I'm so happy now. Okay, anyways, I'm just sounding manic, so I'm just gonna go. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I will see you guys next time. Bye!